Hey, listen here, this is the top 10 failures of the PlayStation 3. I'm Johnny Reps from CrashLove Gaming. Please like and subscribe. Haze was a highly anticipated first-person shooter released in 2008 for the PS3. Haze was originally touted as the PlayStation's answer to the Xbox 360's Halo, in that it was expected to be a massively popular online first-person shooter. Developer Free Radical, who at the time was also working on the eventually cancelled Star Wars Battlefront 3, delayed the game's release several times, which cast doubt over the potential quality of the final product. After the game was initially released, the game turned out to be mediocre at best, and certainly no Halo killer. Critics and fans alike lambasted almost everything about the game, including the terrible AI, poor visuals, short single-player campaign, weak gameplay, lack of innovations, glitches, poorly written characters, and well, the list goes on. The game was truly a disaster and marked a huge misstep for the PS3 while the system was still trying to recover from a lackluster launch. When the PlayStation 3 originally shipped, there were two models made available, both of which supported full backward compatibility with PlayStation 1 and 2 games. However, subsequent releases began to slowly remove PlayStation 2 compatibility, first when the later released 80GB model only played some PS2 games, while others would underperform or not work at all. Finally, the feature was entirely removed when the Slim model was released in 2009. Initially touting a feature and then later removing it angered a lot of fans. However, gamers somewhat forgave Sony for this due to the Slim being much more affordable than the initial PlayStation 3, as well as the fact that the console now had a steady stream of quality exclusives being released. When the PlayStation 3 launched in 2006, both offered models were markedly higher in price than its two competitors, the Wii and the Xbox 360. At a whopping $500 and $600 for the 20 and 60GB models respectively, this was at least double the launch price of the Wii and a whopping $200 higher than comparable Xbox models. In fact, a chief Xbox executive revealed in 2006 that Microsoft was shocked and actually downright gleeful to learn how huge of a price advantage that they had over Sony when the pricing for the PS3 was announced. It's well noted that the PS3 had a troubled launch, and this pricing disparity certainly could have been seen by many as one of the chief culprits of this. Even though the current generation of Microsoft and Sony consoles have a pretty comparable online gaming experiences, 10 years ago, this was a different story. Sony's PlayStation Network, while continually improving on the PlayStation 3, never really caught up with the 360's in terms of quality and functionality. Its primary selling point always being that it was free, PSN was less of a comprehensive online gaming service and kind of more of a loose connection between each individual game's online functionality. Lacking certain features across the board, such as the ability to mute players, leaderboards, game invites, and moderation of online play, the quality of each game's online play rests entirely within its own bubble, pretty much. This led to multiplayer functionality being inconsistent from title to title, and there really was not an overarching, comprehensive thing that held them all together. For a console that prided itself in being top of the line in many respects, the PlayStation 3's online service certainly left a lot to be desired, to say the least. I'm going to skip the debate here over which controller has the better design and simply point out the numerous flaws that the PS3 controller had. For starters, the L2 and R2 buttons were very loose, spongy, and slippery, making them really awkward to use, and a definite downgrade from even the PlayStation 2's controller. It also initially removed vibration functionality, but this was soon re-added in later iterations when DualShock 3 became a thing. Finally, 6-axis tilt functionality, which was the PlayStation 3's tacked-on version of motion controls, was awkward and imprecise to say the least. It sucked that a lot of first-party PS3 games needed to shoehorn functionality of this, quote, feature for years to come. Despite all these shortcomings, I'm thankful that Sony didn't end up going with the original design of the so-called boomerang controller, even though I actually think it did look strangely cool. Sorry about that. When the PlayStation 3 was released, it had exactly one notable title at launch, and that was Resistance: Fall of Man. While a good game in its own right, many did not see this single title as justification for buying the expensive and still unproven console. A lot of early exclusives like MotorStorm and Warhawk ended up being just good, and not really the system sellers that Sony was hoping for. Many exclusives also had delayed releases, such as Killzone 2 and Haze. It took over 2 years after the console's release until the system actually had a decent library of exclusive games for people to play. This slow burn could have spelled disaster for a company that was not as financially robust as Sony.
With a level of interaction, sophistication, and reality.
PlayStation 3's cell processor was well noted by a lot of developers to be extremely difficult to program for. Despite this fact, it was very powerful for its time, but this advantage was minimized because of its complexity, which made it difficult to utilize correctly. For less well-equipped developers, this made games created for the Xbox 360 or PC very hard to port or optimize on the PlayStation 3. This led to many multi-platform titles suffering from worse graphics, frame rate drops, and other optimization issues on the PlayStation 3 versus their counterparts on the Xbox 360. A previous entry in this list actually noted that the PlayStation 3's online was kind of lackluster in its execution. This issue is kind of related to that, but I thought it deserved its own spot on the list due to the profound negative effect it has on the PS3's online experience. Being unable to voice chat with friends playing other games made setting up games with friends a huge chore on the PlayStation 3. This made drastic measures such as actually calling your friends who you want to game with a telephone, or using the PlayStation 3's archaic text messaging system as your only ways to communicate with other gamers who are not playing the exact same game you were playing. They also needed to be playing in the exact same party and also in the exact same map and the exact same game that you were playing in order to actually talk to you. So they already had to be playing the game that you wanted them to play with you in order for you to set up a game with them. So essentially trying to set up a game with anyone who you weren't already playing with was a gigantic pain in the ass. Frustrating. One of the Xbox 360's biggest initial so-called shortcomings may have actually turned out to be a good thing in the long run. You see, not all 360s were sold with an onboard hard drive, which forced developers to minimize their update sizes and also make all gaming installs optional, not mandatory. So, how this affected the PlayStation 3 was, since all PS3s had hard drives, many games for the PlayStation 3 shipped with mandatory installs. The suspected reason for this was because it allowed lazy developers to spend less time optimizing their games for the PS3. Many PlayStation 3 games also had regular updates that took hundreds of megabytes or even gigabytes of storage space, due to paid DLC often being included with regular updates and then unlocked later via a code if it was bought. Both of these practices quickly cramped the hard drives of people who bought early PS3 consoles with smaller storage spaces. PlayStation Home was a failed experiment by Sony that lasted far too long, in my opinion. Launched in 2008 and initially marketed as a virtual social network, Home eventually sort of morphed into a clunky interface for accessing online games. Home remained in its beta phase for almost 7 years until its closure in 2015. Though it was modestly successful, the service was clunky, had a lot of crazy long loading times between areas, was overtly commercialized, and did not deliver adequately on what many expected from it. Sony also had missteps including numerous glitches and bugs, extremely frequent downtime for maintenance, removal of several popular areas, and overemphasis on microtransactions. Despite being profitable enough to qualify as not a loss, and having over 40 million total registered accounts throughout its 7 years, Sony pulled the plug after realizing that Home would never catch fire like they had initially envisioned. They were wasting resources that could be better allocated on more profitable ventures. The architect behind the initial launch of the service, Oscar Clark, argued that Home's ultimate failure was that Sony would not go all in on the venture, instead treating it as an afterthought rather than something central to the PlayStation experience. Well, either way, PlayStation Home was overhyped and underdelivered, and now it's gone. So that was my list of the PlayStation 3's top 10 failures. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I miss any? Do you hate me? Please leave me a comment in the section below. This has been Johnny Reps from CrashLove Gaming. Thank you for listening. Please, if you like this video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to us on YouTube for future rants, talks, top 10 lists, video game footage, reviews, etc., so on and so forth. Follow us on all of our social media pages like Instagram, Facebook, and share the video so more people can see this great content. Thanks for watching, and this is Johnny Reps signing off, hoping Stone Mountain 64 will finally collab with us fucking hell. Oh yeah, and one last note, if you have any ideas for future rants or for future top 10 lists, make sure to leave them down in the comments below and we will take a look at them, or we might not. Either way, please leave a comment, because we like the interaction and we like to read. Not books, but, you know, stuff on the internet like most people. No one reads books anymore. Thanks for watching, and for the third time, this is Johnny Reps from CrashLove Gaming bidding you farewell and hoping you have a great ass day. A great ass day.